Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as watering of plants is rather molten duty than yours, especially when intellectual pleasures await you. Come, your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
I don't like German. It's not all becoming language. And it perfectly well how plain I look after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. And he laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he is leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a greater sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Your guardian has many duties and troubles in his life, and merriment and trivialities would be out of place in his conversation. And you must remember his constant anxiety over that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow an unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. I'm sure we might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. Sure, you certainly would. You know German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce an effect on a character who, to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I'm not sure that I would want to reclaim him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, let him reap. Cecily, you must put away your diary. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we carry about with us.
Yes, but it normally chronicles the things that haven't happened yet. Couldn't possibly have happened. Besides, I think memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
You speak slightingly of a 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in younger days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? Wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. Do not like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
It ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
Suppose so, but it seems very unfair. Was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript was abandoned. I mean that in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble! This is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. In fact, I think it would do her so much good to go for a short stroll with you in the garden, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I've not mentioned anything about a headache.
Yes, I know this, dear Miss Prism, but I knew instinctively that you had one. In fact, I was thinking about that, not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not inattentive.
I'm afraid I am.
Ah, that is strange. If I were fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her very lips. Metaphorically, madam. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, is not yet returned from town.
We do not expect him till Monday.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one whose sole aim is enjoyment, as that poor unfortunate soul his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and your pupil any longer.
Egeria, Doctor. My name is Letitia.
A classical allusion, drawn from the pagan authors. But I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, that I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it some good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. You might go so far as to the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the ruby you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Ugh. Poor geology. Poor German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just written over from the station. Please watch his luggage with me.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Avenue W. That's Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him that Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seems very much disappointed. I'm very sure that you, Miss Prism, in the garden. He seems anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Oh. Tell Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. And I suppose you'd better speak to the housekeeper about a room for him?
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. Feel rather frightened. Afraid to look just like everyone else. He does.
Oh, my little cousin Cecily, I am sure.
You're under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. And you, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked. You mustn't think that I'm wicked, cousin Cecily.
Well, if you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I should hope you've not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all this time. That would be proper.
Well, I suppose I have been rather reckless.
Glad to hear it.
I mentioned something that happened very bad in my own small way.
No, I don't think you should be so proud of that. Though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It's much pleasant than being here.
I don't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
Oh, that is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up Monday morning by the first train. I have an engagement in London I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement. If one has to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you had better wait until Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wanted to speak to you about your immigrating.
About my what?
About your immigrating. He's come up to buy your outfit.
Oh, well, I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my clothes. He has no taste at all in neckties.
But I don't think you should require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he did say at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
The reports I've heard of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
Ah, I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I wanted to inform you. You might make that your small task this afternoon, if you don't mind.
Oh, I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind if I reform myself this afternoon?
I think it rather quixotic of you. But I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Oh, thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite at all unless I have a buttonhole.
Chrysanthemum?
I'd soon have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never said such things.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. Not the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
They are snare every sensible man would love to be trapped in.
I don't think I should like to trap a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
Too much alone, dear doctor. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, a womanthrope never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The practice, as well as the precept of the primitive church, was always distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church hasn't lasted up until the present day. You do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that this is simply remaining single. A man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. It is very seldom the sea leads weaker vessels astray.
Ah, but is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive to his wife.
And often I hear not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be trusted. Ripeness can be depended on. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from the fruits. But where's Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the school.
Mr. Worthing.
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing, this is indeed a surprise. We did not expect you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope all is well.
Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother Ernest. Dead?
Quite dead.
Blessing for him, I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolences. You have at least the notion knowing your is the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Oh, poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad blow.
Yes, very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
He was carried off by a severe chill, it would seem.
As a man sows, let him reap.
Charity, my dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the interment take place here?
He seems to have expressed a wish to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? That hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any situation. Joyful, or in the present case, distressing. I've preached it at harvest celebrations, at christenings, on the Day of Atonement, and on festal days. The last time I preached it was in the cathedral, as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the Upper Orders. The bishop who was present was very much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
I believe you mentioned christenings, dear doctor. I suppose you know how to christen all right? Well, that is to say, you are constantly christening, are you not?
It is, I'm afraid to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they seem to have no concept of thrift.
But is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was believed unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any infant that I inquire. No, I love children. Rather, I wish to express a desire to be christened myself.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
If I have, I certainly have no recollection of it.
But have you any doubts on the subject?
I most definitely intend to have. Look, I don't know if the thing would bother you at all, or if you think I'm a bit too old now.
Not at all, not at all. The sprinkling and indeed immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical experience.
Immersion?
Oh, you needn't have apprehension. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed advisable. Our weather can be so changeable. At what hour would you like the ceremony performed?
I suppose I might trot round about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that very hour. A set of twins that occurred on one of the outlying cottages of your own estate. Poor Jenkins the carter. He is such a hard-working man.
Well, I honestly don't see much fun in being christened with other babies. I think it's childish. What has past 5 do?
Admirably, admirably. And now, Mr. Worthing, I must not intrude into this house of sorrow any longer. I just pray you be not too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
It seems to me a blessing of the most obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! I am so pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you've got on. You've and change them.
Cecily.
My child, my child.
But Uncle Jack, what is the matter? Do look happy. You look as though you have a toothache. I have such a surprise for you. Guess who is in the kitchen? Your brother.
My brother?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived half an hour ago.
What nonsense. I don't have a brother.
Uncle Jack, however badly he may have behaved to you in the past, you couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I will tell him to come out, and then you'll shake hands with him. Won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we'd all resigned to his death, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
Brother in the kitchen. I don't know what this could mean. Oh, good
Brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I'm very sorry for my wicked ways, and I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you will not refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing would induce me to take his hand. I find his coming down here perfectly disgraceful, and he knows very well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest was just telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury. He goes to visit so often. Surely, there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of tea.
He's been telling you about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
I wouldn't have him talking to you about Bunbury or about anything else from now on. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Well, I must admit, the faults were all on my side, but I find Brother John's coldness to be peculiarly distressing. Especially considering that this is the first time I had been here and expected a warmer welcome.
Uncle Jack, if you do not shake your brother's hand, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
Very well, but this is the last time I should do it.
It is wonderful, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation. I think we might leave the two brothers alone together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You've done a beautiful action today, my child.
We must not be premature in our judgment.
Algy, you young scoundrel, you have to be out of here at once. You have no right whatsoever to Bunbury here. What is it?
I've unpacked Mr. Ernest's thing in the room next to your own. I suppose that is all right.
What?
It's luggage, sir. I've unpacked it in the room next to your own.
It's luggage.
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 pack boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can only stay a week this time.
Merriman, call the dog cart at once. Mr. Worthing has suddenly been called back up to town.
Yes, sir.
The liar you are. I've not been called anywhere.
Yes, you have.
I've not heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back, Algy.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the slightest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily's a darling.
You're not to speak of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. What's kind of hilarious in them? It is grotesque to be in deep mourning for a man who's really spending a week at your house as a guest. I call that grotesque.
You're certainly not staying with me for a week as a guest or as anything else. You've got to leave, and by the 4:05 train.
Certainly not going to leave while you are in deep mourning. It would be most unkind if I did. If I were in deep mourning, I'm sure you would stay with me. I would think it very unfriendly if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you don't take too long about it. I saw a man take so long to change with so little effect.
Well, it's better than being all as overdressed as you are.
If I am, occasionally, a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden perfectly absurd. However, you've got to catch the 4-5, and I hope you have a pleasant trip back up to town. This bumbering, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
It has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that's everything. Oh, but I must see her before I go. Make arrangements for another bumping. There she is now.
Oh, I barely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to send for the dog cart.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
And we've got to part.
I'm afraid so. It was a very painful parting.
It's always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone whom one has just met seems almost unbearable.
Dog cart is at the door, sir.
I can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope I shall not offend you if I state quite openly and frankly that you seem to me to be the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. In fact, if you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to
Oh no. It is simply a young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, consequently meant for publication. Hope you will order a copy when it comes out in volume form. Pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down some dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You may go on. Ernest, don't cough. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't make much sense, does it?
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell her to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anyone in the world but you, Cecily. I love you. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course I will. Why, we've been engaged for 3 months.
3 months?
Yes, it'll be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack first told us that he had a younger brother who was incredibly wicked, you, of course, became the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. One who is much talked about and is always very attractive. He begins to feel there must be something to him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, and when was our engagement actually settled upon?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another. After a long struggle with myself, I accepted you here by this dear old fountain. The next day I went out and bought the string in your name. And here is the bangle with the lover's knot that I promised you always to wear.
It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste. It's the excuse I've always given you for leading such a bad life. And here are the letters that you wrote me.
My letters? But I never wrote you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember perfectly well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote 3 times a week, though. Sometimes oftener.
Oh, I did anything.
No, it would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off our engagement are so beautiful. So badly spelled. But even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Yes, on the 22nd of last March. You can read the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. Weather still continues charming.
But why had you broken off our engagement? What had I done? I had done nothing. I'm very displeased to hear that you broke off our engagement. Especially when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a serious engagement if I hadn't broken it off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally. Does it?
Yes, dear, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, will you?
I don't think I could now that I've met you. Besides, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You mustn't laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a childish dream of mine to love a man named Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But my dear child, do you mean to say you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But what other name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my own dear, sweet, loving little darling, I really don't see what you can have against the name of Algernon. It's not at all a bad name. In fact, it's a fairly aristocratic name. Half the chaps who go up to bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if I was called Algy, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I fear I could not give you my undivided attention.
Your rector here is, I suppose, well versed in all the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on the most important christening. I mean, on most important business. It won't be away more than half an hour.
Oh. Considering that we have been engaged since the 14th of February, and I only just met you today, I think it rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
We'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. The messenger's proposal to my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Did you tell her that Mr. Worthing was in his library?
No, miss. He went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Ask Miss Fairfax to come here. Mr. Worthing should be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. Only one of the many good elderly women Uncle Jack is associated with in his philanthropic work in London. I don't like women who are associated with philanthropic work. Seems they're very cold.
Miss Fairfax.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Cecily Cardew. Cecily Cardew. Oh, that's a very sweet name. I feel that we will be great friends already. I like you more than I can say. Oh, how nice of you to like me so much after knowing me such a comparatively short time.
Well, my first impressions of people are never wrong. You will let me call you Cecily, will you not?
If you wish.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
With pleasure.
And that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be an admirable opportunity for me to introduce to you who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I assume?
I don't think so.
That is quite as it should be. Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown outside of the family circles. This is quite as it should be, I think, for once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And that makes men so very attractive.
Cecily,
education are remarkably strict has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So do you mind if I look at you through my glasses?
Not at all, Gwendolyn. I enjoy being looked at.
You are here on some short visit, I suppose?
No, I live here.
Indeed. Your mother or female relation of advanced years resides here also?
No, I have no mother. Nor in fact any living relations.
That's so.
My dear guardian, along with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
He did not mention to me that he had a ward. How very secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. Of course, now that I know that you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I'm afraid that this news does not fill me with feelings of unmixed delight. I've liked you from the moment I met you, Cecily. But now I am bound to state that, well, I wish that you were not quite so alluring in appearance and a tad bit older, perhaps. In fact, if I may speak quite candidly.
Pray, please do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should speak quite candidly.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the most noble possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, has plenty of examples of which I refer to.
I beg your pardon. Did you say Ernest?
Oh, yes.
Oh, but I'm not Mr. Ernest Worthing's ward. I'm his brother's, his older brother.
Brother? He never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
Well, I'm afraid to say they have not been on very good terms for quite some time.
That explains it. In fact, now that I think of it, I've never known any man to mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load off of my mind. It would have been terrible for a cloud to come across a friendship such as ours, and I was growing most anxious. Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your ward.
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
My dearest Gwendolyn, I see no reason why I should keep it a secret from you. The little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
I feel there must be some slight error in Miss Cardrew, for you see, Mr. Worthing and I are engaged to be married. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post at Saturday at the latest.
You are under some slight error. Ernest proposed to me just 2 minutes ago.
That is strange. For, you see, he proposed to me yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One must always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry, Miss Cardrew, if this causes you any mental or physical anguish. But as you can clearly see, I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, Miss Fairfax, if it should cause you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I will consider it my duty to rescue him, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten himself into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you refer to me as an entanglement, Miss Cardrew? You are presumptuous. In matters such as these, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? Now is not the time to wear the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am very glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is clear that our social circles are vastly different.
Shall I lay tea as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
What a very well-kept garden you have, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it.
I had no idea that there were any flowers in the country.
There's many flowers here, Miss Fairfax, as there are people in London.
Personally, I don't know how anyone survives in the country. If anyone knows anyone does. The country always bores me to death.
Yes, well, I believe that is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I hear the aristocracy is suffering from it very much at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I am told. Shall I offer you tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you, Miss Cardew. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
And that's Miss Fairfax.
Miss Cardew, you have filled my tea with lumps of sugar and given me cake when I specifically requested bread and butter. I am known for the sweetness of my disposition and the gentleness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my dear innocent boy from the machinations of another girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go. It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other similar calls to make in the neighborhood.
Oh, Ernest, my own Ernest. A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young person?
Dear little Cecily, what on earth put such an idea into silly...
Thank you, you may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack? Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
What young lady? Good heavens. Of course not. I could have put such an idea in your pretty little head.
Thank you. You may.
I felt that there was some slight error, Miss Cardew, for you see, the gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh. Are you really called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Are you really called John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. The truth is, it is John. It's been John for years, in fact.
Gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
Oh, my sweet wrong Cecily. Will you not?
I have but one question to ask my guardian.
An excellent idea. Mr. Worthing, where is your brother? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is of some great importance for us.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it pains me to speak frankly to you. In fact, it is the first time in my life I have ever been forced into such a painful position. But the truth of the matter is, I have no brother. I have never had a brother, and I never intend on having a brother.
No brother at all.
None.
Not even of any kind.
Not even of any kind.
It is clear that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
Not a very pleasant situation for a young girl to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will will hardly decide to follow us there.
No. Men are such cowards, aren't they?
So this ghastly state of affairs is what you call bumbering, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful bunbury it is, too. The most wonderful bunbury I've ever had in my life.
I've already told you, you have no right to Bunbury here.
This is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury wherever one pleases. A very serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist, good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants any enjoyment in life. I happen to be serious about Bunbury. Unless you are serious about it, I haven't the remotest idea. Not everything, I should imagine. It's of the most trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in all of this is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to trot down to the country nearly as often as you like, dear Algy. And quite a good thing, I'd say.
Your dear brother is looking a little under the weather, isn't he, Jack? You won't be able to trot down to London as often as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing, either.
Well, as regards your conduct to Miss Cardy, I found you're taking in a sweet, innocent young girl like her to be completely disgraceful. To make no mention of the fact that she is my ward.
But I can find no possible defense for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young woman such as Gwendolen. Say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I simply wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen, that's all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardy.
Well, there is very little chance of you and Gwendolen being engaged.
That is no business of yours, Algy.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it.
It's a very vulgar thing to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then nearly at dinner parties.
You can sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in such terrible trouble I can't quite make out. You seem to me to be perfectly harmless.
Well, I can't eat butter in I can't eat muffins in an agitated fashion. Butter will probably get on my cup.
It's perfectly heartless of you to eat muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. In fact, when I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately would tell you, I refuse everything, except food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
There's no reason for you to eat them all in that grieving manner.
Do have tea cake. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens. Suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
You just said it was perfectly heartless to be eating muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algy, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't ask me to leave without having dinner first. I never go without my dinner. Nobody ever does, except vegetarians and people like that. And besides, I have made arrangements for Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Earnest.
My dear friend, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. Well, you see, I made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble this morning to be christened myself at 5:30, and I will naturally take the name of Earnest. Gwendolen would wish it. We can't both be christened Earnest. It would be absurd. And besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. As far as I can recall, I have never been christened. That is a very different matter in your case.
Yes, but I haven't been christened in years.
Yes, but I have been christened. That's the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can handle it. If you're not sure about your having ever been christened, I must say I think it's very dangerous you're going on at such a late age. You can hardly have forgotten that someone quite closely connected with you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
And you said a severe chill is hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Modern science is always making such wonderful improvements in things.
Nonsense. You're always talking nonsense.
Jack, you are the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left. Besides, I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake!
Why on earth then do you allow it to be served up to your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality?
Algernon, I have already told you to go once. I do not want you here. Why won't you go?
I haven't finished my tea yet. Still one not enough.